computer.
Okay.
All right.
So you can hear me, and that's good.
And you can hear me.
I can't hear you yet, but I'm going to try and do it the other way.
Okay. Well, if we were having father-daughter conversations, what do you think would be an important message?
Are you muted?
No, I'm not muted.
Wait, I have you muted here. Hang on a second. I don't know why. Hang on. There it is.
So you got me now?
I got you now.
And you can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, let me see something. Do you have me now?
No.
I was muted.
You were muted.
I was muted.
Okay, I can unmute you as well.
Yeah.
Yes, good.
Well, as I said, as a young lady, what question would you like to ask to a fairly wealthy father who's had a modicum of success and is still able to return to the hood without a disguise?
That's important. Because a lot of people can come back as long as they're wearing, a hood, and that's different. There are so many questions. I think a lot of children have questions about their fathers in terms of, what was your life before? But I guess also as someone who, for example, the fact that you've worked in entertainment for a long time, to me, I have an interest in sort of historical changes that you've observed. And do you want to turn the light on in there? Oh,
yes, that would be great.
It's over by the chair my grandma sits in, next to the couch. It's on the side.
Carefully disguised.
There you are.
I love spy movies. Okay. All right.
So I guess one of my big questions is always, for example, how have you seen, and we've talked about this like on the phone, but how have you seen the music industry change since you first began? And like, what kinds of fields are now, for example, okay, I have recently, because of who I'm connected with now, become aware of things like, for example, the commercial music industry, as in music for advertising, which is something I never really understood. I knew it existed. I knew that jingles existed, but I didn't understand how that evolved into the music for commercial today. And also, just commercial music in the sense of the industry, the record industry. How has that changed for you from, being a performer and also as a lawyer? Like, how did you see, and who's, like, I kind of see them as these different powers. Like, who have you seen growing and who have you seen receding, and how do they kind of interact with each other?
That's a great question, Olivia, because over the time I've seen, well, one, a lot of traditional musicians have done well with jingles. Luther his first money was made writing jingles. And it's an area that, as a creative person, you really have an edge. You can never imagine a commercial jingle written by a Madison Avenue executive. It would probably bore the musicians to death just recording it. And so it gives creative people, it's almost like when you're writing a commercial, you're focusing your creativity on one thing. What can I say beautiful about this pack of Marlboros?
Right.
Or what can I say beautiful about Coke? One of the fellows that I knew was a writer. He worked with Luther, and he wrote a jingle, and it stays in my head. And I think they used it, and it was get on into life, get into living, get into loving, get into Coke. You can see it. It's just that Coke has different connotations.
Right. Get into cocaine. Right.
So although it was a catchy jingle, somebody says, I think you might be promoting drug use. But it gives a creative person and an opportunity to focus their creativity on something. And so most of your advertising, let's just say most of your corporate people may not be creative. And so they need the creative people to come and apply that skill to a particular product or service. So if you notice, look at so many of the commercials and music now have embodied rap feelings or oldies. You know, the good thing about old songs and rap is that people identify it, because that's the whole point. So that's a great point for the industry. And now that marketing is on so many platforms, not just television, but computer, Sirius radio, that a person who's doing the jingles can do quite well.
Very cool. I guess one of my other questions, and okay, I'm going to sort of say something that is my understanding of what I've seen and then see if that kind of resonates with what you've experienced. So one of the things that I look at right now for let's say a creative person is that we are at an unprecedented time of being able to represent yourself in various fields and to grow yourself, not just as the single-minded, composer or singer or whatever it is you do, but you now can do a little bit of everything. I know that there are detriments but there are also advantages. And one of the things that I have kind of thought a lot about is how much it's empowered individual artists, and I mean musical artists generally, but also artists in general, to better control their opportunities and to better evaluate opportunities from a perspective of, for example, I think the 60s and 70s, there was the sense that I get was that there was this, you could be discovered anywhere. You could be on the street and you could just look beautiful and you'd become a model tomorrow, or you'd become a singer, a famous singer. How true was that perception, which is what I've picked up from this time?
Well, that really worked. I think everybody recognizes persistence, and I'll call it creative persistence. When a lady waits out of your office every day, and when you walk in the building, you see them and they say, "Hi, I'm a singer and I certainly would like to meet with you." After a while, it sort of wears the guy down. It's like, okay, what do you do? Come on in. And in many instances of people being discovered like that. Even I was watching television, and the artist, was it Big Sean?
Mm-hmm.
And he was sharing how he had a relatively minor job at a radio station. And Jeezy.
Jeezy.
What's his real name?
Yeah.
The one that's married to the Kardashian.
Oh, Kanye.
Right, that's the one. Yeah, how could I forget Kanye? Anyway, Kanye was being interviewed at the radio station, and
we have to evacuate. I'm kidding. We don't have to evacuate.
Well, as long as if the house burns down, they'll find us still giving a blow-by-blow description.
Right.
Like, Olivia, the fire's coming up from the left.
It's pretty hot. I think I'm on a first degree, second degree. We're slowly melting.
We got to let the world know, it's experiential television, So I want you to feel what it's like to be in the situation.
Burned alive. Right.
But anyway, Kanye came to the radio station to be interviewed, and Big Sean found an excuse to be there, was there, and literally blocked the door almost, when Kanye, and so it's like, I rap, I'm good. So finally Kanye, he says, okay, well, give me 16 bars. And great lesson here. He had 16 bars to give. Okay. He didn't say, let me get this cassette. He dropped right into his 16 bars. And it was impressive enough that Kanye, that began the process. And I think a key thing is it didn't happen overnight. He said it took about another 2 years so to get his record out and whatnot. And so I think that today there is a combination of those things that people appreciate, that personal creativity and persistence. Sometimes we're getting into the electronic age and you think if you send a person an email and a text, they pay attention. But all businesses, we call it eyeball to eyeball, kneecap to kneecap, that people are still impressed by personal interaction. So I'm sure that Kanye was impressed that this guy, of all the other millions of people who would like to be on his label, was creative enough to get in the way and intelligent enough to have something to offer. Just say, man, if I get my 15 minutes of fame, I got something to give,
Right.
So today it's a combination. I think the electronic stuff is good in that it can give you the ability to cast a wider net, where in the old days you'd go down to Broadway. There was a building on, was it 1650 Broadway? I think 51st and Broadway. And in that building you had Buddha Records, you had the Isley Brothers. I remember Little Richard's manager was there. You had a ton of record companies. And so you could go and literally stand outside of that building and you'd see the Isley Brothers park across the street at the parking lot. And so if you stood there long enough, you're going to see that person that you want to see. And if you have something that gets their attention, whammo. Now, with the internet, the net is so wide that you can literally know about people in Houston or Atlanta and get a feeling, and maybe I need to go and stand outside the door down in Atlanta or California.
Right.
So the technology is an asset, but it still comes down to the personal interaction. Whatever you buy, whatever you say, it boils down to you. It's a person. And so today, young people have great opportunities. They can use all the technology, plus develop that personal aura, that contact, so that when their moment comes, it's like, ta-da, I'm ready.
I do also, so one of the things that I perceived about this sort of getting picked up off the street thing was that there was a lot of power in the hand of the investor, and the investor being the label, whoever had the money to develop the artist. Because I think that that's changed a lot too, is are we as a creative field now looking for just the jewels that are already, pre-created, and then we're just sort of putting them out to market? Or are we creating the diamond are we taking the coal that has like a good opportunity to turn into a diamond? And I think that has changed that balance of, I found her and I made her, sort of the what's the one? What's that old guy who Svengali? The Svengali, like the Svengali personality is very
Pygmalion.
Pygmalion, exactly. Has kind of receded. And I felt like that was Dreamgirls, the Berry Gordy's, the Clive Davises, kind of era of record executives who, through a cult of their personality, created artists, and then had the sort of back and forth of crazy stuff because artists really came in not knowing anything, came in just with a simple talent and had to learn a lot along the way about the business side and getting screwed over in many ways. I find it very interesting that just listening to people, for example, Chance the Rapper, who's not even releasing music like with money and not releasing on a label, but is being featured on TV in Kit Kat bar commercials and is headlining concerts. And it's interesting because so there's currently, right at this moment, there is a beef between Remy Ma and Nicki Minaj. And amongst other things, Remy Ma, she said a lot of crazy things and said, Nicki Minaj slept with this person, that person. Right. One of the things she said in her diss track that really, I listened to it yesterday and really moved me, and I was like, wait, hold up. She said, you're signed to whatever her label is through Cash Money, through Young Money, Cash Money, whatever, which means your money touches 5 hands before it touches you.
Yes.
And everything is being billed to you, is coming out of your budget, your tour, your this, your that. So I'm an independent artist. Me, Remy Ma, is an independent artist. So for she said, you're making 35 cents on a ducat. And for every dollar I make, for every album I sell, you have to sell 10 to make for yourself. And so it's a really interesting thing that, having this independent lane has made me think a lot about, because I'm still extremely reluctant to just jump into bed with any label that calls. And that's part of the reason I haven't run after them, is that I'm really just...
Olivia, this is your dad, okay? Let's not talk about jumping into bed.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, not, jumping onto bikes, jumping onto the backs of bikes or whatever. But, I've been thinking a lot about this because the question has been, there is, with signing to a major, you have the opportunity to have greater exposure, therefore possibly having opportunities that you would not have access to on, just based on how you go on by yourself. However, you also have, the advent of the 360 deal, where even though you have these opportunities, they're still putting their fingers in the pot. So just what do you,
Well, I think that the music industry was changed by the rappers. In the 60s and the 70s, if you were not with a label, you couldn't get on the radio. And if you were not on the radio, you didn't sell any records. One of the differences between gospel music and, you might say, R&B or even pop music, was that the gospel recording, the artists never really made any money from record sales, because there was no way to get real airplay. And so they literally sold their records at the concerts. So the rappers come along and they're delivering a product that the record companies did not recognize, did not respond to. Now, in the old days, that would have been like a go back and get your job at the post office moment. Okay. But the young folks, and I tell you, man, we all owe a great debt to the young people, because they were like, I ain't going back to the post office. I ain't going back to Burger King. I'm going to put my records out. And so they started with, for example, street music. They pressed their records. They learned the art of making recordings, and they sold them at dances and discos. And then the era of the disco, there was a company called Disco Den, whose name, Dennis Franklin. And they had over 300 DJs around the area, the East Coast. And so they could take a record. And so in 300 venues, people are hearing it. And heck, if they buy 5 records a venue, okay, you sold 500 records that night.
Right.
And so, I'm sorry, wrong. 1,500. One of the things about, we need the computer, even for small things, okay? We've lost our ability to count. And like, how old are you? Let me check. Well, Libby, I tell you, so the artists now have independent avenues to get their created product to the marketplace, and that they didn't have in the 60s. And so whenever the record companies lose that control, then the the control goes somewhere. And so in that issue between Nicki Minaj and Remy Ma, it's a good point, because if you're the direct pipeline, when you go to a law firm, we used to have a saying, when you went to a law firm and they had a lot of names on the door, Biddle, Diddle, Bottle, and Boodle, then they were going to charge, because you see, all those guys got to get paid.
Right.
And so similarly, the more hands you have between the customer and the artist, the bigger that pie, the more slices that pie is going to be cut.
And then therefore, the bigger your pie has to be for you to get to make any major.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, I think this is a question right now for a lot of artists, is social relevance more important than financial remuneration? Are they equivalent? Are they, like, because for example, there's Azealia Banks who, God knows, I don't know what money she's making because she freaking, she can't get her life together long enough to make a record. So like, she's not selling product, right? Like she is at minimum, maybe she's sort of like, it's sort of like watching Nina Simone in her later years, where Nina Simone was a beloved icon who was just going through it. Like at the end, everyone was just kind of like, I don't even know where she is, like, or she's just like in France, like, I don't know, it's too bad, and like she had all these accolades, she has all this love, and now she's probably one of the most sampled artists in like history.
Yes.
But from her like estate perspective, she had all this social relevance, and it did not really make its way to the bank very often.
Well, I think every artist is confronted with that choice. Do you, and many times, we have that perception that it's either social relevance or money. Sometimes, and I'd say most often, you have to make that choice. Sometimes, though, you can combine the two. And, when you can capture a moment, if you think about, what was it, Curtis Mayfield, what was that record?
Shaft?
No.
Oh,
well, I'll tell you one that
Superfly.
Superfly. But no, there was a record, A Change Gonna Come. Right. You all did that the other day in your show.
Sure did.
That was a conscious record.
Sam Cooke,
that went mainstream because it captured a vibration of the moment. And so when you do that cultural relevance, if you can capture the vibration, then you can then merge the two, the money and the consciousness.
Right.
Now, Libby, being a senior citizen on the air, we have to take a tea break.
All right. Let's take our tea break.
We'll be right back, folks.